Well, hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone listening in. Welcome to this latest edition of the VORW International Podcast, the voice of the report of the week. Thank you for tuning in, going out to the evening hours of Monday, the 27th of January, 2025. Slightly late, but better late than never. We're going to get into things pretty quickly because, and I don't intend for this to really be the longest show in the world. It's more or less just an announcement program, and it's going to lay the groundwork for the next main show, if that makes any sense. First and foremost, though, two sponsors. Let's get to them. They help keep everything going. Take a listen. Today's episode is brought to you by Bluegill Enterprises, LLC, where creative design meets craftsmanship. Whether you're envisioning a serene patio oasis, a sturdy privacy fence, or a bespoke structure that stands out, Bluegill Enterprises is your go-to. Born in the Midwest but crafted in Oregon, Bluegill was founded to bring creative design to backyards, homes, and farmsteads. They specialize in one-of-a-kind designs tailored to your needs. From custom carpentry to intricate construction, and even rock and earth work, they do it all. Bluegill proudly serves Oregon's Willamette Valley. Contact Bluegill Enterprises today at bluegill.ent@gmail.com. That's BLUEGILL.ENT@gmail.com, or visit their website at bluegillenterprises.com, BLUEGILLENTERPRISES.com. VORW listeners will receive a 10% discount. Just mention the show. Let their expertise and creativity make your dream outdoor space a reality. This broadcast is brought to you by Wayland Media, your Swiss Army knife creative studio. Are you ready to launch your own business, book, or album, but you're still on the search for branding that feels like you and your work? Look no further. Based in Seattle, Washington, having worked with hundreds of individuals and businesses nationwide, Wayland Media is the creative powerhouse of Christopher Miller, a multidisciplinary director, designer, and photographer. His studio has a passion for allowing others to tell their story through all visual mediums, including logos, cover artwork, motion graphics, merch design, web design, action, and lifestyle photography. In its 12 years of experience, Wayland Media has worked with musicians and authors to global telehealth companies in order to bring their brand vision to life. With a concentration on storytelling in the design space, Wayland Media breathes new air into the stark and stale landscape of today, ready and willing to collaborate with you. Take your project to the next level of professionalism with a free quote, and, as an extra incentive, listeners of VORW will receive a 20% discount. Just send an inquiry to chris@waylandmedia.co, CHRIS@WAYLANDMEDIA.co, chris@waylandmedia.co. Receive a free project quote with a 20% discount. Wayland Media, your friendly neighborhood creative. And now, back to the program. I'm not sure if anyone out there tuned in actually pays attention to this, but if you keenly observed, generally, and there are exceptions, as far as sponsors and ads and all of that on this program are concerned, they generally run in 5 show intervals, meaning 5 shows at a time, and then that's that. The 2 sponsors that you heard, this was their 5th show. The way that I usually do it, if I have any advertisers or sponsors in the program, is I sort of say, well, for 5 shows, I could charge this, and that'll be that. That's usually the interval that I do things by, 5 shows. So, after today, everything has sort of ran out, so there is a lot of free space. If you're interested, this is what I'm sort of getting at, if you're interested in advertising on the program, as you've heard over the last number of shows, I'll be happy to do an ad read for pretty much anything, for the most part. Of course, there always are going to be limitations within reason, but I'm very open, really, to... It could be a book, it could be a YouTube channel, it could be your music, it could be your product, your business, your service. For the most part, anything. And again, I'll be happy to do a little bit of an ad read. It's at a reasonable price. Next 5 shows, it would be featured at the beginning of each program. Good way to get your message out at really what's an affordable rate. I should be charging probably 5 times what I normally do for these, but it's just a way for me to add a little bit of extra income to keep really the radio broadcasts that I do on the air, and it's just something that I really just do to try to help with those sorts of costs, and I'm not looking to actually sit here and make any substantial profit off of this. I'm just trying to make a little bit so I could then use that money to pay all the radio bills, which add up month after month after month, and so on and so forth. So anyway, if you're interested, if you want to advertise on the show, if you want me to do an ad read for your business, your service, your media, whatever it is, I'm very open to things. Shoot me an email, vorwinfo@gmail.com. Give you a quote, I'll give you any information you need, and hey, who knows, maybe we'll work something out. There is no harm in asking. Never forget that. There's no harm in just shooting the question. If you like what you hear, that's great. And if not, no offense taken here. All's fine by me. So, anyway, throwing that out there. There's going to be a lot of space if you're interested. Okay. Main reason I'm here at the microphone today, as I'm sure you all could very likely infer, is because I have an update on the program, its future, where things go from here. In the last program, I'll be honest, at the beginning I was not motivated to be doing this at all, and I'm sure you could probably tell. It was just one of those days, and it is what it is. You have these days sometimes, that's all I could really say about it. Bit more motivated today. And anyway, I wanted to put things in the form of a question for listeners out there. I was saying, well, I've really no significant preference as to what the next show is going to be. I said, it's customary to do a predictions show this time of year. However, there really hasn't been a lot of interest expressed in it, and I haven't really gotten any predictions. So maybe I'm sort of overestimating the amount of interest in the predictions show. I said, well, I could still do it. I mean, I'm fine with doing the predictions show, but it doesn't really need to be that way. Honestly, I was not, and still am not, motivated to do any predictions of my own. So I said, in lieu of that, we could also take the show back to its roots. I could ask a random question that could lead to a very diverse and hopefully interesting variety of responses, and we could do that instead. I said, look, I've no preference in the matter. I'll do whatever you want me to do, so let's put it down to a vote. Shoot me an email. Tell me what you want to hear next. I'll calculate it out. Majority wins. The results are in, and it wasn't even close. The random show has won the vote handedly. I would say the random show got about 75% of the vote. It was actually more than that, believe it or not. The prediction show got less than 25% of the vote. So the interest is clear. A lot of people, a lot more people, that is, want to hear a random show as opposed to a predictions show, and that's exactly what we are going to do at this point. And I'm perfectly fine with that. Like I said, I wasn't even overly enthused about the predictions myself. I wasn't even going to do one, and now that there isn't going to be a prediction show this year, I could sort of say this comfortably. I think that the prediction show this year wouldn't be as interesting as most people would have thought it to be. I think it would probably be 90% US politics, and it would just be, okay, so-and-so says Trump is going to save the world in 2025. Okay, and so-and-so says Trump is going to end the world in 2025. Oh, and here's an email. This person says that Trump is going to destroy the United States. Oh, and this next email comes in from someone that says Trump is going to restore America to its former glory. And this listener in Europe says that Trump is going to do this, and so-and-so says Trump is going to do... And that's all that the show is going to be. Trump good, Trump bad. And then I read 60 emails of just various derivatives of that for 2 hours, and that's your show. The Trump good/bad show, aka Predictions 2025. And I think it's one of those things that I think it would get real old real fast, because you could hear this from any other media network, mainstream or otherwise, ad nauseum, relentlessly. And I know a lot of people tune into this broadcast for a break from all of that. So I think that might be another reason why, why perhaps there was so much interest for the random show. And that's one thing that I also try to strive for with the radio broadcasts that I do. We'll talk about that actually a little bit later, but I know most of you now are probably wondering about the question for the show. So let's share that first, and then we'll go into a couple other points I want to raise. So this is one of those times where sometimes self-doubt gets in the way of things, and you know how it is. It's like, I came up with a number of questions, so if the next show is a success, I'll keep this going, because I actually have a whole list of questions that I've made. And anyway, sometimes self-doubt gets in the way, where I'll sit there and I'll think, I don't know, maybe the question isn't all that good, and I'll sort of think about it that way, and then I'll think, oh, I don't know, should I redo it? Is this not going to be a good one? So on and so forth. I get these sorts of thoughts all the time, and a lot of this stuff, it just holds you back more than anything else. So I'm just going to bite the bullet. Self-doubt hasn't gone away, but I'm just going to say, well, hey, maybe even if it's right, I'm just going to go in anyway, and it'll be what it is in the end. Okay, here's the question, and I am certain this is going to guarantee a wide variety of responses. I hope you'll find this subject as interesting as I do, and you can go into this as detailed as you want. You don't have to hold back for this one. For those of you that know, and if not, you'll know right now, I'm a history buff. I enjoy history. It's one of my favorite subjects. I just like reading about the past and, how things were however many years ago, be that contemporary history, ancient history, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, prehistory. All of it is just fascinating to me, to read about how different the world was in certain ways all those years back, how similar it was in others. There are all sorts of fascinating and even mysterious events out there. And sometimes, as I go on these deep dives on various historical subjects, I'll sit there and think to myself, God, I wish I could have been there to see that, And sometimes you'll read about things and you'll think, is the interpretation of this really correct, there's some things that it's just like, there are still unknowns after all these years, that we may never really know the answer to what actually happened at one place or another, and you just think, God, I wish I could have been there to see that, so I would know for sure whether this is some historical event that happened thousands of years ago, hundreds, or even just 10, 15 years ago. Say, I wish I could have seen that, wish I could have been there to witness that. Well, that begs the question that I'm going to ask you. If you could go back in time and witness any event in history, but you couldn't intervene in any way, meaning you are just a fly on the wall, You'd be perfectly safe. It's like you're not even there. It's like you're just observing it, like a movie of sorts. You're just witnessing what happened. What moment would you choose, and why? So again, the question that I ask, that we're going to cover in the next broadcast: if you could go back in time and witness any event in history, but you could not intervene in any way, what moment would you choose, and why? Again, the caveats here: you can't intervene, you're not actually physically there, you're just like an observer, essentially, so your observation has no bearing whatsoever on how things play out. It's preordained. At the same time, you aren't in any harm, so if you wanted to witness some sort of battle, you don't have to worry about getting shot or killed or any of that. You are just there observing it, almost as you would a movie, for instance. You're not even noticed. You're just watching things play out. It can be contemporary history. If there is some sort of unexplained event or some sort of, cold case, crime-wise, that happened even just 10 years ago, and you wish you could have seen what happened so you could solve the case or whatever, that's fine too. If you want to go back 100 years, that's fine. 500, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 years ago, however long ago, that's fine by me. Likewise, has to be exclusive to Earth. Okay, that's another thing. Has to be exclusive to Earth. But if you want to go back also to the age of the dinosaurs, that's on Earth. You could do that. If you want to go back to the Precambrian era, that's fine by me. It just has to be historical. It has to be here on Earth. You're observing it. Can't intervene. Any event in history. You name it. Given those caveats, it could be anything, practically. So I hope this provides for some diverse responses, anyway. There's a whole lot to choose from when pretty much everything is on the table. So just let me know, again, what you would want to observe and why. What historical event would you like to see if you had the opportunity? And just explain why, maybe throw in a little bit of context, which would be helpful to those maybe unfamiliar. Take it any direction you want. You could write as much or as little as you wish, but in order for this to succeed, I need to hear from you. Way to do that is to send in your response to this question in writing to the following email address: VORWINFO@gmail.com. So I hope this question was interesting and enjoyable, and hopefully it'll provide for some enjoyable and diverse responses. I think that's, at least as far as diverse responses are concerned, I would wager that it's a guarantee. And anyway, feel free to share whatever you want, long or short. And if you liked this question and you want to hear more like it, just let me know, because like I said, I have a whole page typed up of questions just like this one that I'll be happy to employ in future programs, so just let me know. So there you have it. Again, VORWINFO@gmail.com. So there we go. Next show I hope to do will be sometime in early to mid-February. I'd say sometime maybe between February 8th and the 15th, sometime within that week. So try to have your response sent in by Saturday, February 8th. We'll say that as the tentative date. That way then I could start compiling everything, recording, editing, etc., and get the show out within that week. That'll be the plan anyway. And it would be great to hear from you. Otherwise, again, I just wanted to mention that in addition to the podcast, of course, I do the radio broadcast of mine. It goes out twice a week, every week. And it goes out on the shortwave. The main broadcasts to North America are on 4840 kilohertz. And the main broadcast to Europe and Asia is on 17810 kilohertz. You can find a schedule for that in the description of the program. I was very pleasantly surprised. I was actually checking some of the statistics, and if you would believe it, despite the state that the medium of shortwave is in these days, the decline, by that I mean, the amount of correspondence the program has received in the last year is at a record high. So my broadcast is actually performing the best that it ever has as far as listener feedback is concerned, which took me greatly by surprise. I was genuinely not expecting that, so that was very surprising, but it was also very personally encouraging, and I'm happy to still see the radio broadcast performing as well as it is. It's been on the air for a decade now, 10 years straight, and this last year has been the best year and most successful year ever for it. So very surprising, and again, very personally encouraging to see that it's being so well received by so many people at that. Like I mentioned, I don't get paid for the show. I do it really just because I want to do it, because people like hearing it, and I like doing it. I have to pay for the airtime, though, that the broadcast is transmitted. And like I said earlier in the broadcast, those costs add up from one month to the next. So if you do want to help support with those costs, you could send in a donation via PayPal to VORWINFO@gmail.com, or you could join my Patreon page, patreon.com/TheReportOfTheWeek. The Patreon page, it's a way to support the broadcast and also get a little something in return. It's not much, but if you support the program on Patreon, you get every radio show available to listen anytime you want, free of charge, thousands of hours of content. It's just my little way of trying to give back, for your support. So that's just something to consider, and then you could re-listen to any of the shows on demand, and like I said, thousands of hours of content if you'd like to hear them. The radio broadcast, it's slightly different than the podcast, admittedly, but it's a format that, again, I adopt by choice, because I want to. Each program is 1 hour in length, do 2 shows a week, so that's 2 hours of content each and every week. And generally, for about the first half hour of each broadcast, I go ahead and I discuss, oftentimes, the news of the day, but I try to take a look at news headlines that maybe you don't hear too much about, especially here in the US, so I take a break from a lot of the political stuff, and I try to discuss other things going on in the world. I try to take a look behind the headlines or at some of the stuff that, again, is consequential, but you just don't really hear anything about. And I'll read some articles, but then I'll break it down. I do what I like to call news analysis, because I do have a nose for news, as they say, and I have plenty of thoughts on plenty of things going on around the world that I can't necessarily discuss comfortably on YouTube, because, you have to be careful with what you say, and when I tried that back in 2020 with COVID, I almost got the whole channel shut down. So I said, no, forget it, I'm never doing that again. But I'll share my thoughts freely and openly on things going on around the world. And a lot of listeners really enjoy it. It's very well received. And then I balance out the news talk program with some listener music requests, which I know I've had people here very, very harshly and strongly tell me how much they hate the music requests, and they could just deal with it. Sorry, you can't sleep to the music requests. I have a lot of fun taking and playing those as well. And there's a lot of good variety, very eclectic. I'll usually, after a few songs, break open the books and try to share a few facts and details about some of the music played, shout out some listeners. It's just a fun show overall. It's a lot of fun to do. A lot of the folks that tune in have a lot of fun listening as well. A little bit of background there. If you want to tune in, though, you're welcome to do so. Again, check the description for the broadcast schedule. Remember about the Patreon, you can listen on demand that way. If you would like any more information about the show, because there are ways you could stream it online or on your phone without a radio, you could reach out to me, VORWINFO@gmail.com. I could send those resources your way. If you'd like to listen on shortwave, and you'd like to get a radio to listen into the broadcast, and you'd like any recommendations for any radios or antennas, etc., I'll be happy to provide you with those. You could shoot me an email again, vorwinfo@gmail.com. Just keep in mind, if you're in North America, you'll easily be able to hear the show on shortwaves. That's anywhere in the US, Canada, Mexico, the Caribbean, Central America. If you're in South America, you'll still likely be able to hear the show, especially if you're in northern South America. So if you're in Colombia, Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname, French Guiana, you could get a signal. But probably even a little to the south, if you're in areas of northern Brazil, perhaps even Ecuador as well, parts of Peru, you could still get the signal. For listeners in the southern parts of South America, that's where things just might get a little iffy. Can't guarantee reception, but it still might be worth a shot. If you are in Europe, you will be able to get a signal at this point. I'm confident of that. The main broadcasts on 4840 kilohertz definitely reach Europe, and the broadcast to Asia on 17810 kilohertz has shockingly been serving as essentially a de facto European service of this broadcast as well, and gets excellent response consistently. Likewise, if you are in North Africa, you'll be able to get the signal. If you're in Russia, you'll be able to hear it. Central Asia. If you're in the Middle East, you will. If you're in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, you'll hear it. Southeast Asia, you'll hear it. If you're in Indonesia, Malaysia, you'll hear it. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, you'll hear it. Just let me know if you're interested. You know the email address. And again, remember the question, the more responses I get, the better the next show will be. That is a guarantee. If you could go back in time and witness any event in history, but you could not intervene in any way, what moment would you choose, and why? I'd love to hear from you. Let's make this next show a good one. Remember, you've got until around February 8th or so. It's not a strict deadline, but let's just keep it at that for now. And I hope we get a lot of good responses, and I hope the next program to come makes for an enjoyable listen. Thanks for bearing with me, everyone, and hopefully this next show will be a good one. Fingers crossed, anyway. And if it's not, it's not, and I'll accept full responsibility for it, but hey, let's see what happens. Alright, thank you for bearing with me, thank you for listening, and until next time, be safe, be healthy, and I wish you all the very best. Take care, this is VORW.